Good afternoon and welcome to the council meeting for March the 8th, 2022. I'll start first of all, Madam Clerk, with a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. Councillor Campbell.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Middleton Hope.
Present.
Councillor Palladino.
Present.
Councillor Parker.
Here.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Here.
Acting Mayor Dodick.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Croson.
Present.
And Mayor Higgin.
Present.
All present. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we're gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Start with recognitions. Start with Acting Mayor Dodick.
Yes, thank you, and I apologize for my voice or soon to be lack of. Recently, we raised the Ukrainian flag, which continued to fly up until today in front of City Hall. We take freedom for granted, and as we sit here today, an entire country has been invaded because they yearn to remain free. Freedom is precious and worth fighting for, and the Ukrainian nation is valiantly fighting a nation that wants to take that away from them. I stand with the Ukrainians and wish them all success. I wish I could do more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Your Worship. First off, I just want to congratulate New West Theatre for their presentation of Sexy Laundry. It's nice to see that they were able to get local theatre back safely, and it's a great diversion for the city to be able to go out and see a great show. And I want to pass on kudos to that guy that usually sits beside me, Jeff Carlson, who put on a stellar performance in the show. So congratulations on that. Also, and I'm sure we all want to acknowledge this, the tremendous effort to organizers and volunteers of the Briar that's going on right now. It's so great to turn on the TV and see the City of Lethbridge logo and also Oki on the sheets of ice, and they're doing a tremendous job. So congratulations. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. Just want to recognize that today is International Women's Day, and just remind people that to imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Together we can forge women's equality, and collectively we can all break the bias. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. I'd like to recognize a few different groups. Lethbridge Trail Alliance, they had their first AGM on February 28th. They are 1 year old this year. So congratulations to them. I'm looking forward to the different projects that they work on throughout this next year. Congratulations to all the Build Award winners from the Build Awards on March 4th. Building industry is vital to our economic success, and it was great to see that. And also congratulations to Exhibition Park for a successful Ag Expo this year, a great showcase to those producers and suppliers in our ag industry. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick acknowledgement of the new Deputy Chief Gerald Grovemeyer was sworn in yesterday at police headquarters, and a number of members of the Veterans Association were there, along with members of the Police Commission, to welcome him to the city.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Croson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. I have nothing to add to everybody's eloquence already said. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Palladino.
Yeah, I have nothing to add either. Everything's pretty much been gone over. Thanks.
Councillor Parker.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to say we're coming on to 2 years of the pandemic, and it's hard to believe how much things have changed over the last 2 years. And I just wanted to say kudos to this community. We're not at the end, but I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think it's important that we stay respectful to one another in regards to people in their masks and people who don't want to wear masks. I think it's being accepting and respectful and following the rules is very important. I want to thank our community how well they did over the last 2 years. It's also exciting to see people back in council chambers. It's been a long time, and I know and I respect that also some people can't be here in person, so I appreciate everyone's patience as well. It's great to see members of our administration. Used to seeing everyone in a box. In a box, I mean on the screen, of course. And so it's just nice to see everyone face to face again and being respectful to one another. I also want to congratulate Lloyd Brierley, our new city manager. This is your first official city council meeting. Congratulations on behalf of the community, and I know that you will serve us well. And welcome back to a lot of members of administration. It's good to see you as well, and to my colleagues. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, it's a lot of great, exciting things happening throughout our community in recognition, so thank you very much for those. I want to touch a little bit more on the International Women's Day. So March is Women's History Month, and today we celebrate International Women's Day. I can think of no better examples to celebrate here in Council than our two colleagues, Councillor Croson and Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Today we celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. Today also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity, with this year's theme for International Women's Day being Break the Bias. We each bring our own biases, and unconscious or not, to every situation we encounter. We make quick judgments and decisions about people, and those split-second decisions can sometimes unfairly favor some folks over others. As we work to identify those biases and understand them, it's important that we also understand that different experiences and perspectives strengthen us as a community. So I'd like to celebrate all of the women who work hard each and every day to bring their knowledge, creativity, and skills to help strengthen our community and move us forward as a society. Thank you in particular to Councillors Croson and Schmidt-Rempel for the work they do for our community. We're a stronger City Council because of your ideas, intelligence, and experience. Thank you also to the 602 women that have chosen a career with the City of Lethbridge, including our amazing City Clerk, Bonnie Hilford. Thank you, Bonnie. The last thing I want to add is I had the opportunity to attend the powwow here last in February, and it was I was honored with a Blackfoot name, and I'm hoping that I say this correctly, and I keep trying to get confirmation on it. Iginapidabi, which translates to kind person, and I want to thank Elder Black Plume for honoring me with this Blackfoot name. With that, we'll move on to the agenda. I have a resolution here from Acting Mayor Dodick, adoption of agenda, that the agenda of the regular meeting of City Council on March 8th, 2022 be adopted as presented. Madam City Clerk, are there any additions?
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. There are two additions to the agenda. There are two confidential items. 14.4, Human Resources Matter, that's a verbal item. And 14.5, Intergovernmental Relations Matter, number 2, that's also a verbal item. Thank you.
Acting Mayor Dodick.
So I'd call the question on the adoption of the agenda as amended.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? So carries. Next motion, consent agenda 4.0 from Deputy Mayor Croson. Be it resolved that the minutes of the following meeting of City Council be approved and the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the same. Now, I believe it is up on the screen, and Deputy Mayor Croson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. There are quite a few items under the consent agenda. As you say, it's up on the screen. There are 4 minutes of 4 meetings up there. We also have on there the status of directive resolutions. And if people want to look at that, there are 2 dates that are being changed. One moving to April 28th with the Employee Health and Wellness, and one moving from March 16th to May 18th. There's also the procurement summary report for January 2022. And then there are a few items coming from some of the standing policy committees. We have the NNAC Center update, which is to receive as information coming from Cultural and Social, the first update from that department for 2022. We also have a request for unclaimed found money. This is coming from the Governance Standing Policy Committee. There are 2 pieces to this: to obtain authorization to allocate the unclaimed found money to the finder, and to also bring forward for first reading an amendment to the city manager bylaw, which would have the city manager be authorizing the approval or authorizing the disposal of unclaimed money up to $5,000, which was brought forward by City Council last June. And in addition to that, we have a couple of bylaws for first reading. Unless there's any questions on the consent agenda, I will call the question.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any questions? Seeing none, question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? So carries. Next, we'll move on to presentations. And we have the City of Lethbridge relationship with the urban Indigenous community and Kainai Blood Tribe. And first, I'd like to call up to the mic Blood Tribe Elder Mike Bruised-Head.
I understand I have 5 minutes, so this is going to be the quickest presentation I've ever made in my life. Okay, I've been called here by my associates, the urban community here, the Blackfoot community, to address sort of a sadness that transpired a couple of weeks ago with regards to the proposed idea of how we're going to use the Bowman Arts Center. And let me go back in late 60s, 70s very quickly when the Friendship Center movement arrived here in Lethbridge. And that was to begin, before its time, what we now know and call as the reconciliation time. Well, look at those 50 years. We were edging to very excellent relationship with the community. And so the public and Blackfoot perceived perception and the thought of the rejection and the emotion against that was very questioned, not only by us, but leadership from the Blackfoot community, tribal councilmen. And so whatever you do here, it radiates like a pebble you throw in a quiet pond. It reaches the boundaries of the Blood Piikani Sikskai Reserve. So never think once that what you say and do here is just urban. The media catches it, everybody catches it. I think we're going along what everybody has been trying to have some input how to deal with opioids. And this is going to be one area that would provide counseling, job opportunities, mental health work, etc. for the urban people that you see, and everybody starts kind of criticizing them, especially Chamber of Commerce, and I don't blame them. But this was an avenue to address those urban issues front and foremost. So all of you have to live with that, whether it's one or two people, live with that rejection perception that is out there. And mind you, the last economic impact count was Blood Tribe alone spent $200 million in this community. So we're people to reckon with in terms of purchase power. And if you need to have background, look at the background of where we're at and what the amount of human energy that it took to reach this point. Also, I congratulate you, Your Worship, Mayor. So you have a name that is very profound. And I think whoever the elder was, which I know, gave you that name with all best interest. So I think you have a name and the reputation to live up to that name, because then you would embarrass the elder community. And I'm just saying that in sort of a guiding way, you know. You have several years, all of you, to prove yourselves. And that was what I was getting at in the inauguration. Put Lethbridge on a good map, on good things, so that way we're all cheerful. I've been watching the curling, and I am proud and I'm thankful. I'm not all just a radical elder, but where you see the okie in the middle of the curling sheets. You know, we're still striving on this one hand and then kind of mixed messages on this other hand. I think we put those together, then you will have truly tremendous support from the urban community of and I'll call them the First Nations people, and from Piikani, Sikskai, and Kainai. And so I know in the council chambers out on the Blood Reserve, they read the newsprint, and the chief is probably going over the MOU, wondering, if it's going to move forward effectively, or do we scrap it again and be at odds and polarized situation? You have an opportunity to change that direction, providing something that is going to, suffice. If it's not the Bowman Art Center, and if you provide us another center, good. But here's the thing, what if another 7-10 years, nobody buys Bowman? You have to face the music then, because if there's no buyers, then that perception of, dividing the city again is going to stick with you. So you better sell the building, get a buyer. If not, what we're saying then is, well, why go through all that effort? And I understand economic development opportunities, business ideas. So like somebody said, I hope the motive, the reassessment of that is just not spent on skin color. Hope it's not based on that. And so I believe that you guys aren't basing that, that it's truly economic thing. But like I say, if it's not sold in the next year, I'll say just 1 year, I'm not going to even say 2-3 years, then that's going to come back and haunt you, because there was never really a buyer to sell that building. And yet we're trying to achieve. These people behind me, they're all representative of their agencies, and there's 15,000 Blood Tribe members, close. They're kind of looking at this, and we want to have joint management practices to help those people that the city calls the street people. We want to help out, but this kind of delays that effort, So being around Lethbridge and being a former executive director of Friendship Center in the 80s, I admire those people way back then. The first president of the Friendship Center was Dr. Leroy Littlebear, and he still has this vision, and he's getting up there, and I give him credit. So hopefully the vision that he had way back then actually happens. It's 50 years ago, and hopefully we don't divide and go back 100 years ago, So that is my advice to each and every one of you. I'm not here to attack you individually, but collectively, think about what I'm saying. I'm giving you words of guidance here. Let us work together again with solid, outcomes, because that strained the relationship, and before it takes off wider and wider, then, we're not going to talk again, meaning the urban community. So, Mayor, you've got a very challenging name, and me as an elder, that name really is going to stick to you, but you have to prove yourself. And if not, then that elder may come back and say a few words to you, or you're going to embarrass him. So this is very strong Blackfoot protocols. When somebody attains a Blackfoot name, there's a spiritual intent and aspect to it. So I'll leave that, how you're going to handle that and how you're going to live up that name. You're the leader of your group here. You're the chief here. So I don't know if that's 5 minutes, but before this continued divides, let's pull it together. That's my advice to you, because it took 50 years, if not longer, to get to this point. Let us not dissolve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Brucehead. Appreciate that. Next, Blood Tribe Councillor Travis Plaited Hair. Oh, he's online. All right. Travis, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay. Understand ko okay kayam sinima kit kuna itsimachim okay mo kat kinina kimapipitsi kimapipitapi. It's your Blackfoot name. Thank you to Mike for his words. I have utmost respect for Mike and all of my colleagues who are present there. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it myself in person. Like you, I'm attending our tribal council meeting here in Calgary. And big discussion is the future. And we're always looked at, as leaders, we're always looking at how we can improve things for our community, our members. But for me, the most important thing is our children, our grandchildren. We want to leave a legacy for them. We want to leave them a world where they're safe. And unfortunately, the modern world brings a lot of difficulties. And one of the biggest challenges that we're facing as a community all over is the opioid crisis. I've been active in that movement now since 2014 when I was working with the tribe as a blood tribe liaison. I live and have worked and gone to school in Lethbridge all my adult life. I consider Lethbridge my home, although I have moved back onto the reserve because I entered into its highest realm of spirituality, and I wanted to be among the tribe in that role. My new role as councilman for the Blood Tribe is working towards a better future for our people. And all of that includes, like yourselves, economic development, social problems that we face, education. We have a challenging job ahead of us, both you as City Council and those of us that represent on the Blood Tribe Council, as well as the Blackfoot Confederacy and other First Nations throughout Alberta and Western Canada. So there's a big challenge. I've been a part of this group, and they're all sitting there, and I can't name all of them because it'll take more than 5 minutes. There has been a lot of people who have put a lot of effort, a lot of time, volunteering, doing whatever it takes to get the job done. And then unfortunately, like in most cases, leadership is where we get stuck. On a bigger scale, we are dealing right now with the federal government, we're dealing with the provincial government, and now we have to deal with municipal governments too. So it gets very frustrating when good people with good intentions put in so much work for a common goal, and then it only takes one individual to put a stop to all of it. That's very saddening. As far as the Bowman Arts Center is concerned, I was a part of the initial talks when we first started talking about the Blackfoot Hub. It originally started from discussions pre-COVID when the federal government made a big announcement there at City Hall for $11 million for permanent supportive housing, which is another program that I am working my butt off to make sure it happens. And I hope we don't get stalled there. But right now, you got to make up your mind what you want to do. If you want to work with us, I am more than happy to work with you, and I'm sure I can speak with for the rest of my colleagues. I have been given the blessing from our leadership, our chief, McGeaney-Man, to be that unofficial liaison between the Blood Tribe and the city of Lethbridge, which I have been doing for the last 10, 15 years. I also have the blessing of the broader Blackfoot community. I'm here in the city of Calgary. I have my colleague, Sean Singer, who is right down here at City Hall. And he has a big team that the city put together. They're all doing the same thing too. But nobody's stalling them. They're actually encouraging it. You tell us what you want, we'll do it. But unfortunately, we've been stalled. And I hope we can get over this. The funding has been approved. I was tasked to approach the tribe, which I did, got the people necessary, and it was done. The former mayor wanted a MOU. I approached the chief. He was hesitant, but he respected my opinion, and he agreed. We have an MOU, so let's live up to it. Let's do the work. Quit the stalling tactics, because If it's the Bowman Arts Center, or it's the NMAX, or out in the Bald Prairie, I don't care where it is. Just get the job done. That's the main thing. And I get a little frustrated when bureaucracy gets in the way of progress. If it was just a business decision, fine. But there are people literally dying on the street. And we're going to sit back, oh, we're going to sell it all of a sudden when it's been available. We never approached the city for the Bowman Arts. The city came to us and presented the possibility of using the Bowman Arts. They even gave us it doesn't matter to us. We don't have any money to buy a building. So whatever you can offer, we'll gladly accept. So I hope that we can come to some resolution today or in the next little while. In the meantime, I always have a plan B. And I'm not going to share that with any of you here yet. I'm going to wait to see what City Council intends to do here. But in the meantime, just yesterday, I had a meeting with Alpha House and my good friend Jerry over at the facility that they're using because they asked. I don't refuse. I went to elders. They don't refuse. In our culture, we don't refuse to help. But it seems like in your world, it's a common thing. You put a stop to it, fine. But any good team always has a plan B, and I got a plan B. So I thank you, Mayor. I thank you, Council. I apologize if I sounded a little rough, but this is reality. It's not a game. You have to say it like it is. And if I offended anybody, I apologize. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Plater. Appreciate that. Next, Tanya, please, Cross Shield.
Okay, Nisto Anagok Nadweed Spot Wakaki. Thank you for hearing me speak today. I am a registered Blood Tribe member and a tax-paying resident of the city of Lethbridge. I'd like to say I'm a community member of Lethbridge, but I think we still have some work to do before I can state that. I am a homeowner in Lethbridge. I am also the director of Opagassan Early Intervention Society, a not-for-profit charity committed to creating a community of strong, healthy, resilient Indigenous families. I am here today to speak to you about the far-reaching implications of your decisions not to allow the Indigenous Hub use the Bowman Arts Center. It is not merely the rejection of that particular building, but an assertion of this council's leaders to create barriers to relationship building so desperately needed in the current climate of intolerance, both locally, nationally, and internationally. The reality is that since the settlement of your ancestors on traditional Blackfoot territory in the 1880s, our relationship has always been one-sided, pursued as one of economic benefit and not social benefit. Since our ancestors' first contacts, our role in your community has been performative, dancing at openings, at Briar Cups, at rodeos, and at parades, but never relational and never reciprocal. We know through past economic impact studies that Elder Brucehead alluded to that the tribe contributes a lot of money annually to the city of Lethbridge and surrounding area. The decision not to open the Bowman to the Indigenous Hub isn't merely about that one decision, but about a decision to allow NIMBY to be endorsed at a leadership level. Ask yourself, what do you want your legacy to be in terms of historical implications? As a member of the Blood Tribe of the Great Blackfoot Confederacy, I want to see reconciliation and not just rhetoric. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open it up to any questions. No questions. I'll read the resolution brought forward by Councillor Carlson. City of Lethbridge relationship with urban Indigenous community, Kainai Blood Tribe. Be it resolved that City Council thank Mike Bruised-Head, Tanya Priest-Crossshield, and Travis Plated Hair for their presentations, and further be resolved that Council receive the reports as information. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. I do have a motion arising from this. Do I attach it to this resolution, or will it come following?
You would just receive this for information, and then we'll do a motion arising right after.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from my colleagues, questions? Seeing none.
Councillor Crowson has a question.
Hey.
Councillor Crowson, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that Tanya Priest-Crosschild's name was correct. I did hear it mispronunciated, so I just want to make sure it was correct in the resolution, and it appears it is. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mary, and thank you to everyone in attendance today and the speakers. Really appreciate you coming down and making your voices heard. Also appreciate the voluminous correspondence that I and many of my colleagues have received, so thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll just call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? So carries. Now, I'll turn it over to Councillor Carlson. You have a motion arising? No, Madam City Clerk, so is this motion arising from this? There doesn't have to be a vote on bringing this to the agenda? This is fine just to read word, correct?
Yes, Councillor Carlson is allowed to just put that motion right now. Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Have it up on the screen, Ryan. Thank you.
This motion arising, 5.1, be it resolved that City Council rescind its below decision of February 15th, 2022, which is be it resolved that City Council refer this item to administration to prepare and develop a competitive RFP process that contemplates the divestiture of the Bowman building to private entities and report back to Council with this process no later than City Council meeting of May 24th, 2022. Mr. Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. Appreciate Council allowing me to bring something forward, knowing full well that I wasn't in attendance at the February 15th meeting, and I apologize for that, but prior commitments took me away. So thank you, Mayor Higgin. I'm bringing this forward for Council's consideration at this time is to reconsider the divestiture of the Bowman building. I'd like to start by, I do applaud Council's desire to be action-oriented, but sometimes taking the time to be thoughtful is necessary and important. I'll use the phrase, doing it right is better than doing it right now. In the previous term, 2 terms ago, our motto was, get her done. And it served us well in many cases, but not every case. And this was especially obvious in regards, in my opinion, to some of the recommendations in the KPMG report that we've all talked about and read. Moving too speedily with some of those recommendations without taking the time to vet the recommendations and doing all of the proper due diligence caused us many issues. And in hindsight, were probably not the correct decisions for our community. In fact, the KPMG report states that very clearly, that you can't compare apples to oranges, and in many cases that's what's happening. And in fact, they highly recommended that we take the time to examine all their findings without just jumping in. So I'm asking Council just to take a pause and give some time to explore and consider the consequences, positive or negative, intended or unintended. I'm just saying, take the time. I won't go into great detail about the presentations that were just presented. I think they spoke very well and for themselves. So I'd like to talk about some of the other reasons that I think pausing this sale of the Bowman are very important at this juncture. Right now, we're just in the middle of our asset rationalization plan. And rather than making these one-off decisions, I think it makes sense just to have all the information regarding all of our assets and what roles they play in our community before making these decisions. I think we understand that not all communities are the same. We may have excess square footage or park space or whatever compared to other communities, but that doesn't mean that it's not the right thing for our community. Further, Council has done much work on our civic commons, the area we're in right now. We're in the process. We just approved, I believe it's called the Comprehensive Site Plan for the Civic Common in our previous capital plan, and we're in the process of completing that work. Fifth Avenue is quite front and center in that plan. It's identified in the plan as one of the gateways into the civic commons, and retaining ownership and control of the Bowman property as well as the library property across the street allows us to have two of the main anchors to the Centreway. That property may be very valuable and valued to our community. My point is, we just don't know. We don't have all the information. It's coming. Again, this work is in progress, so I'm just asking Council to wait, to take some time, and to ensure that we have all the necessary information before proceeding. Finally, I just want to mention that for its many, many years in our community, the Bowman School has always been a community building, and it has always played a major role in building our community. It has been home to so many organizations, groups, individuals that are an integral part of our community and that we as Council rely on. It helped create these capacities and this resilience in those groups and individuals throughout our community. And I hope that it could continue doing so into the future. Now, I'm not saying never say never. There may be a time for us to part way with this valued and valuable asset that is part of our community. But I don't think right now is the time, especially in a vacuum of information. So again, I'm not saying never. I'm just asking to pause, to take a moment to gather all the relevant information and reflect on the impacts this decision could have in our community, so that again, we can make the best decisions in the interest of our entire community. So I'm asking for my colleagues' support. Thank you.
Entertain questions. I think is this questions or debate that we're in? Councillor Parker? Question? Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carlson. So this resolution isn't just in regards to the sale and the divestiture of the building, not in the operation of what goes in the building or nothing like that. This is strictly in regards to the building itself, of the selling of it. Am I correct?
That was what the resolution was at the February 15th, so that's what I'm bringing forward.
And so my second question is maybe to the city manager. Obviously, we want to work with our partners in finding the appropriate location and working with our partners. Is that process still going to be occurring no matter how this resolution goes?
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct. Staff are already working on those options.
Thank you very much.
I do have a question, Mr. City Manager. Since it's been posted, of course, there's been some communication out there that there's the opportunity of the possible selling of this particular building. Do you know of any communication that has come in of interested parties to purchase this or otherwise? No name, obviously no names, but has there been an interest since this case came out?
Through the mayor, or to the mayor, I'm not aware of any. I would defer to Ms. Trent for any further comments.
Mr. Brierly, at this point, we've received preliminary interest. There's been no formal offers or binding offers made at this time, but certainly preliminary interest at this stage, given where we're at without having a formal process in place.
So is it fair to say that these interested parties could be waiting for this May 24th for the actual information to come back to council?
To be clear, what was intended to return to council on May 24th would be to provide council with options in terms of how they wanted to structure that disposition process, i.e. depending on the price parameters, what that process might look like, and timeline is part of that as well. So,
Okay, thank you very much. Acting Mayor Dodick.
Excuse me. I am disappointed that this resolution, I have a question that comes. We have a process where we have an agenda review committee, which was held last Monday, where we put items on the agenda to discuss. The resolution that is being sought to be rescinded was dated February 15, 2022. I'm not even going to go to the procedure bylaw to talk about whether this is something that could even be brought as a negative with respect to a resolution that was passed within the 6 months. So I'm not even going to go there. But my question is, Councillor Carlson, this came as a surprise to us right now. Why was it not done or submitted during the usual agenda review process?
Thank you. Acting Mayor Dodick, I believe motions arising don't have to be submitted to agenda review committee. They do come up at a council meeting.
Okay, so let me follow up on that question. So that anytime we have a filing motion, which is what this was, anyone can then all of a sudden, without going through agenda review committee or giving notice to council members, bring a resolution that effectively has an operative clause that is more than just a filing motion. Is that your position?
I'd have to ask the city clerk.
Thank you for the question. So the procedure bylaw was rewritten last year, and it allowed for motions arising, which are items or motions related to the item that is before you, to be brought up at that time. They don't have to have any notice or anything like that. That is something new. And even though this is a rescindment, the 6-month time threshold, it no longer applies. That was taken out by the council subcommittee and adopted by council.
And my final question is to the city administration, and I think Ms. Trent alluded to it earlier. The intent of the resolution of Councillor Middleton Hope in his motion of February 15 of 2022 was to bring back essentially options for council consideration to determine whether or not they would be interested in selling the Bowman Arts Center at that time. And that in fact, no decision was made whether divestiture of the Bowman on February 15, 2022, and that basically that decision will be coming back no later than May 24, 22. So I'm at the risk of I'm trying to encapsulate it. Basically, May 24, 22 is a time where this motion could actually be considered and dealt with once we have all the information with respect to the process that at least is contemplated by the administration. Does that appear to be correct?
Thank you, Councillor Dodick. That is correct from administration's perspective, that we would bring forward the options to members of council for consideration, which would include a disposition process and a number of options within that, as well as to hold the property and to defer that decision to a later time, or to make the decision not to divest of the building.
In short, the February 15, 2022 motion did not give direction to administration to sell the Bowman. Is that correct?
That is certainly not our interpretation, that it was to sell, but only to bring forward a process and options within that process.
And at that time, council can decide whether to move forward or not move forward, as the case may be.
That was our understanding, yes.
And Councillor Middleton Hope, since you were the author of that resolution, is that your understanding as well?
It is. There's no indication whatsoever at any meeting, at any discussion, either in camera or outside of camera, that indicated that this building was going to be sold and that would be not used for the purpose that we have been speaking about today. There are other options that are available. This is a business decision. We have a fiduciary responsibility to all the citizens of this community, and that includes examining all of the assets that this city has. That's what we've asked administration to do. Administration now has up until the end of May to come forward with options for this council to consider.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much. And if I could actually follow up with a question to Councillor Milton, because you brought the resolution forward and you've taken some negative feedback on that. And I don't think that was your intentions, what you were doing. I just want to give a hypothetical, if you could say yes or no. If the Boys and Girls Club or Blast would have wanted to go into that building, would you have still done the same thing in taking this forward and looking at divesting it?
Absolutely, and not only that, I've asked that we look at all buildings that the city currently owns. This is consistent with the divestiture policy. It's consistent with portions of the KPMG report and reports that have been produced internally by the city of Lethbridge that says we have assets, let's evaluate their purpose and their future use. Part of that is moving them forward to offer them to the community. This building was never offered to the community for sale previously, and when anyone had any kind of an inkling that this building might be for sale or might be an option, all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork interested. So at the end of the day, it's certainly not my intention to remove an option from a particular group who wants to move into this building. We want to provide them with more options, and I think the city manager has done that.
Thank you, Ms. Trent, as well, for your answers, and thanks for the questions, Councillor Dodick.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Hagan. Then I need some clarity here. What I heard was that this resolution it did not preclude moving forward. So are we still moving forward with locating the Indigenous hub in the Bowman through city manager to any designate?
Through the mayor, again, I would answer by saying that we're wanting to work with the Blackfoot and look at all of the available options. Should the Bowman be one of them, I think there are some other potentially viable options as well that might be equal or better.
Thank you. So just because I heard two different answers. So the Bowman is still on the table.
Yes, the Bowman could be on the table. As mentioned, I think there are other options that might be. There seemed to be a lot of focus on the Bowman. I believe there are other options that are potentially equal or better than the Bowman.
Well, I guess I just need the clarity because that isn't what my takeaway was. My takeaway was that we were proceeding with the Bowman and this resolution stopped that moving forward. Am I out to lunch?
Yeah, through the mayor.
And you never ask a question to which you don't know the answer, and yes, I am out to lunch, but.
Yeah, through the mayor, a bit of an awkward position here, having come into this after some of the discussion.
If I could just pipe in here for a second here, we've got the motion on the table. We're blending things that have happened through the past. So we've got the Bowman that's on there, and then we had some information that was received. Some speakers that came in and spoke about these relationships of this Indigenous Resource Hub. This is completely different. Again, we've talked about this before of the hub going forward and the building, the divestiture of the building or whatever that may look like that's coming back. I just want to know, I think we're going outside a path that we shouldn't be on. I just...
Thank you, Mayor Hagan.
Help me understand why that is not the case.
My thought process was the presentation today was, quite a lot of it was about the sale of the Bowman and the optics in the community. That's why this motion arising to rescind that sale is coming forward.
Acting Mayor Dodick?
Yeah, I took notes of, especially Mr. Travis Plated Hair. And on 2 occasions, he indicated he doesn't care where it's done. And then he says, whatever you can offer. So I believe that ties in. And I think the city manager is trying to say, and this resolution doesn't take Bowman off the table, but it also doesn't preclude other options, some of which may actually be better than the Bowman option. So if your resolution is defeated today, the Bowman still remains as a potential option, as do others. And as the mayor had pointed out, the funding is there. We know that. And there is an appetite and a desire to have an Indigenous hub. Right now, it's just the location is still up in the air, and we understand that this is something that we want to do sooner rather than later, and will be done sooner rather than later. That's my understanding.
I don't have any further questions, so we'll move on to debate. Councillor Carlson?
I'll close, Your Worship. Thank you.
All right, any further debate, my colleagues? Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
For all the reasons that Councillor Carlson so eloquently stated, I'm going to support this motion. We need to take a pause and really ensure we don't find ourselves in a position and having to buy this building back as we work through that Civic Commons master plan and as that comes to fruition. I also believe we need to have a full listing of all building assets that could be potentially considered for sale, and the Bowman should not be considered in isolation.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I really appreciate the passion and from our speakers today, and I just want to assure all those who spoke today that for me, I'm totally committed to having this Indigenous hub where it's going to be, and I believe that administration is fully prepared to find a place that's going to be very appropriate to it. So, you know, whether or not I support the resolution or not, we're still going to go ahead with it. And so I appreciate what Councillor Carlson has brought forward. I just believe we've come to some misunderstandings here, and I totally believe that Council is fully committed to making this an Indigenous hub. So I thank everyone for what they brought forward today.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Parker.
There's always silver lining behind these discussions, and I think the most important thing is a lot of misinformation, I shouldn't say misunderstanding occurred over the last few weeks in regards to the resolution that Councillor Milton Hope brought forward, and there was a lot of heat taken by Council, and I don't think that was never the intention. No matter how many times Councillor Milton Hope has defended his resolution and members of Council have defended it, it's probably had to have this, we probably had to have this discussion, and if anything, it reaffirms, and there's some people that have walked out during some of these questions and all that, but I can tell you firsthand, this council has been with our Aboriginal community partners for numerous years, and it's probably started really taking off under the leadership of Mayor Tarlick, and then from there, Mayor Dodick, then of course Mayor Spearman, then of course you've taken it upon yourself, and I think we do it with sincerity. And so I don't think we should blurry the lines up with this resolution. We were told strictly by our city manager, we may even find a location working with our partners, our Aboriginal partners, that it might even be better than the Bowman. And at the end of the day, the Bowman might be, but right now, the resolution originally was to look at divesting, possibly selling the building. And at the end of May, it may come back that we should keep the building. So we're doing our due diligence. And so I don't want us to muddy the waters here, because there are some, I'm going to say this right, there are some lines saying that we have done things wrong or something like that. I don't think anyone around this table has done anything malicious. If anything, we're pretty proud, and we have a long way to go. And I'll say that firsthand. Like, you think, you know, you put your money where your mouth is, and we've done that. It was unanimous that we allocate and we pass through that money for the Aboriginal Hub, and I think each and every one of us is very, very proud of that. I just don't want us to be painted as something different by the resolution that Councillor Milton Hope brought forward. And so I think that Councillor Carlson's resolution, I may not agree with it, but it created the conversation. It created the conversation to ask the questions of what exactly was meant by the resolution that was brought forward. So there's always a silver lining behind things, and so it may have caught us off guard, but it created the conversation. It gave us an opportunity to give clarification, and I feel really reassured from what I've heard from our city manager today. So for that reason, I will be voting against this, but also keeping an open mind that the Bowman may be the most appropriate place for it. So I will not be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Parker, Acting Mayor Dodick.
It's pretty well been said. There is support for the hub. The dollars are there for it. It's just the location that's up in the air. I supported the February 15, 22 resolution, not in the sense that I was saying the Bowman was not necessarily the place, but rather to see what the process might look like. So when I voted in favor of that on February 15, 22, and I suspect the rest of my colleagues on council did as well, is they simply voted to have administration come up with a process which may or may not be accepted or go forward. So in short, the dollars are there. The location, all locations are still up in the air and subject to consideration, so I can't support this resolution.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Dodick. Deputy Mayor Crozan.
Sorry, I put my hand up accidentally. Nothing from me at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. I too, I appreciate the passion of this, and I understand, Councillor Carlson, where you're coming from. What was confirming to me was that if this is defeated, the Bowman still can be considered as a location for this hub. So that was enough for me to understand that it's something that I will not be supporting, as this process will still unfold out the way that it goes. So with that, I will not be supporting. And I do not see anyone else in the queue, so back to yourself, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin, and thank you and all my colleagues for the, as I opened with, allowing me the time. I do realize I did miss the February 15th meeting, but I wanted to have this opportunity to bring it forward and sort of state my thoughts. So I appreciate you allowing me the time. I appreciate all the thoughts and comments. But I can count, so I'm just going to call for the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. And Madam Clerk, if you can please do a vote by roll call, please.
Certainly, Mayor Hagan. I would just like to mention first that as this is a rescinding motion, it requires 2/3 affirmative or 6 to pass. Okay. Councillor Carlson.
In favor.
Councillor Middleton Hope.
Opposed.
Councillor Palladino.
Opposed.
Councillor Parker.
Opposed.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
In favor.
Acting Mayor Dodick.
Opposed.
Deputy Mayor Crowson.
Most in favor.
Mayor Higgin.
Opposed.
Councillor Campbell.
In favor.
And that is defeated.
That's it for that presentation. Next, we'll move to official business. Resolution 6.1 from Councillor Middleton Hope, utility box wrapping program. Whereas some utility boxes in Lethbridge are old and have aged and weathered, making them visually unsightly, and whereas municipalities such as Airdrie, Fernie, Enderby, and Armstrong have implemented utility box wrapping programs with BC Power, Fortis, and TELUS, and whereas the city's public art program worked with the city's electric utility department in 2020-2021 on a pilot project to install vinyl art wraps on 6 utility boxes in Galt Gardens in downtown Lethbridge. Therefore, be resolved that Council direct administration to investigate the process and costs associated to establish and implement a utility box vinyl wrap program for the City of Lethbridge that includes implementation, ongoing maintenance, utility company concerns, and experiences from other municipalities, and return to Council through the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee November 8th, 2022 for Council's consideration on whether to proceed. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Worship. I think I have a friendly amendment from Acting Mayor Dodick.
The friendly amendment is there, right under there.
And I will read the amendments. So starting with the therefore be it resolved, Council direct administration above down to proceed, removed, and it would be changed with therefore be it resolved that Council requests that the Allied Arts Council provide a report to City Council regarding the completed pilot project together with any recommendations with respect to the feasibility and cost of wrapping additional utility boxes, with such report to be provided by November 8th, 2022. Do you take that, accept that as a friendly?
Gentle nudge.
A gentle nudge. It's accepted. All right, with that, if you want to speak to that resolution. Or if there's questions first, I'm sorry, I should ask if anyone has questions. Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. Through you to one of the movers. Just a quick question. I believe, oh gosh, one of our standing policy committees just had an update on this. Are we just contemplating repurposing that report and forwarding it to City Council?
If there was an actual report, my understanding it was that there wasn't a full report on the pilot project. So I think we still want the report.
Excellent, thank you.
With that, going back to Councillor Middleton Hope, the resolution as amended, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, so is this debate now?
Debate. You can open debate. No more question. Sorry, Councillor Parker, your debate? Okay. Yeah. we're in
So
debate.
just a little bit of a background on this. I'm familiar with a community group that came forward a number of years ago in regard to the wrapping of utility boxes for their community in particular. It was declined by the city at that time. Subsequent to that, the city has clearly made inroads into examining other communities, Airdrie, Fernie, and a number of other communities throughout Alberta and British Columbia, who use these wraps to enhance the utility boxes that are available throughout their community, many of which have become rusted and in a state of disrepair. And so as a result of that, some of these communities have either hosted paintings of various boxes, or they've gone to these wraps. And they do work with the utility providers to ensure that there is a bank of different types of wraps that are used, so that there is some consistency. There are costs that are directly associated back to, or rather, costs directly sent back to the communities that are in favor of this. So this was an opportunity to re-examine this. We completed a pilot project. If some of you have walked around Galt Gardens recently, there are a couple that have been done actually in Galt Gardens. So take a look at them. It is an opportunity to enhance our community rather than have these god-awful green boxes that sit there and rust. So it was an opportunity to bring this forward. I'd like to see what the report has to say, what the viability is, and if there are options in the future for communities who may wish to apply these vinyl coverings to their boxes. If there's no other questions.
There is some more debate in there.
Great.
I'll move it over to Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank Councillor Milton Hope. It's actually a really good idea. I think a lot of us can agree. We've probably seen some of these. I've seen them in Sherwood Park. I've seen them in Fernie, and I can't see much downside. Of course, when you're working with our utility department, we'll make sure they're done in an appropriate and safe manner, but I'm looking forward to hearing back. Thank you for bringing it forward.
Deputy Mayor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. I'm actually tempted to support this motion, as I'm glad to see Councillor Middleton Hope so actively promoting more funding for the public arts. Because as anyone who knows the public arts program knows, the only thing that's actually holding them back, the only limitation they have to doing more of these is funding. So this is actually a resolution that would actually bring them more funding. However, I cannot support it because I also recognize that, one, we are council and our role is governance, not operational. We have a public arts program. We have a public arts committee. It is their responsibility to look at all the areas of public arts. They have done a study of this. They've done a pilot. They are the ones who know what to do and what to bring forward. And I also want to make sure we do things in a comprehensive, well thought out manner. And so I would suggest we leave this to the Arts Committee. Otherwise, I'll be bringing a resolution that we put up more historical statues all around the city. Because once council gets into operational, who knows where this will head. So I will not be supporting this.
Acting Mayor Dodek.
Yeah, the funds with respect to the wrapping of the utility box are included in the public art work plan. And public art, it comes under the umbrella of the Allied Arts Council. So our role in governance is making sure that monies that were used to fund public art was spent appropriately. So part of this resolution is to have the Allied Arts Council let us know how the money was spent, where it was spent, and what might happen in terms of the future, which is a governance role, not operational, so I will be supporting this resolution.
Thank you. I too will be supporting this resolution. I think it's a great idea. I've heard about this for over the past few years of individuals wanting to do something with these boxes that are completely, they look terrible in some areas of our community. So it's, you know, to be able to have this in here, I've seen what's been done in the downtown core. I think they look fantastic, and so I thank Councillor Middleton Hope for bringing this forward, and I will support it. And Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. I will be supporting this as well. I appreciate it coming forward because it does a couple things. In my mind, it does recognize the good work that the Allied Arts Council have been doing in our community. I think we have seen the output of some of these projects around the downtown, and I think we've all noticed how attractive and excellent they are. So I think it acknowledges the good work that the Allied Arts Council and the Public Art Committee have done in our community. And it also, I believe, in answer to Deputy Mayor Croson's thought, provides an opportunity to say, look how amazing these are. Do you want more? Here's the price tag. So it opens the door, just a warning as we're heading into a budget year, for that opportunity. But it is an opportunity, so I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thanks very much for bringing this forward, Councillor Middleton Hope. I too will support this. It's great to see interest in the public art and make sure that we are supporting that throughout our community. The boxes do serve to visually improve our downtown, and support to our public art program is always something that we should be looking to do, particularly throughout our city. Thank you.
With that, back to yourself, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Just a comment to Councillor Croson, and I appreciate the backhanded compliment. At the end of the day, I not only appreciate art and public art, and I would certainly advocate for more public art, whether that takes the form of statues or drawings and murals on the sides of walls. I'm very much in favor of it. So thank you for that, and I look forward to calling the question.
Question has been called. All in favor? Any opposed? Opposed is Councillor Croson. Sorry, Councillor Campbell, are you in favor? Okay. And Councillor Croson? So, Councillor Croson, can you hear us?
I'm opposed to this.
Okay.
Let's stay out of operation, but no.
Thank you. All right, that is. All right, next we're going to move into bylaws. 7.1, bylaw 6347, amendment to bylaw 579. Sorry?
I was...
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Carlson.
I was unavailable on the 15th, so I need to sneak out of this discussion.
We will excuse you. Thank you very much, Councillor Carlson. Maybe you can go and order us lunch, supper. Okay. A bag of chips. Thank you. All right, we'll move along here. Bylaw 6347 from Councillor Palladino, amended to bylaw 5798, the West Lethbridge Employment Center Area Structure Plan. 7.11. For the second reading, be it resolved that bylaw 6347 amendment to the bylaw 5798, the West Lethbridge Employment Center Area Structure Plan, be given second reading. Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We need to support this bylaw, and let me explain. First, I agree with the concept that the University Drive should be the gateway, commercial gateway corridor to West Lethbridge. And I'm sure someday in the distant future it will be. But this area structure plan is almost 10 years old now, and nothing has really changed. And let's be real, sterilizing 80% of a private property is a project killer. It devalues the property and leaves it ripe for picking, and this is what makes me uncomfortable. I wonder if putting such an onerous restriction like that on a property might be challenged. It is obvious this proposal is an interim use and thus temporary. Both our Land Use Bylaw and the Municipal Government Act have provisions in them to allow the issuance of temporary development permits. I would suggest a permit be issued and remain in effect for at least until 2027. The project is clearly assembled from movable components designed to do just that, to eventually be moved. The proposed use doesn't require extensive servicing, some electrical and some stormwater management perhaps, and that's about it. Mr. Duncan is a local businessman and mentioned several times that he would like to work together with the city. He was very clear that if any large format store, Walmart, Costco, were to show up at his door, he could have the site ready in no time. Yet the only question Mr. Duncan asked was never answered, and that was, what is the setback that was on the city-owned property to the north of his? And I was wondering if I could get an answer to that at some point. Finally, you will recall that during our orientation and strategic planning, we heard how the city would like to become more approachable and user-friendly, and that we wanted to be deal makers and not deal breakers. So here's our chance to take a small step towards that and approve this amendment.
Open up for any questions. Any questions? Acting Mayor Dodick, is question or debate? Your debate? All right. And I see Councillor Parker, question or debate? Debate. All right. Question. Now, you did have a question, Councillor Palladino, for admin, or did you state?
I wanted the question was asked at the public hearing. What was the setback required on the city-owned property to the north of this one?
Oh, I'm sorry you've heard that. My apologies, everyone. We can't asking questions. It's a second reading. My apologies. I am sorry.
Okay, all right.
Just debate. I'm sorry. So I'll move on with the debate to Acting Mayor Dodick. Thank you.
I'll tell you right away, I'm opposed to this, so you won't have to wait till the end. I do have a fair bit of comments to make. So where do I start in terms of my debate as to why supporting this bylaw is a bad idea and should be defeated? Let me start by referring to the two letters we received. One said that they had no problem with the minimum setbacks, but thought that the utilization should be raised from 20 to 50%. Another letter said, another objected on the basis that the exemption only applies to one landowner in the structure plan and suggested cities sit down with landowners. So I want everyone to understand that this bylaw deals with one piece of land only in that particular area structure plan. I'm sure I don't need to remind you that this amendment, I already said that, sorry. I'm losing myself. Basically, if this bylaw passes, and I'll use the same words that Councillor Palladino used, it says it will actually sterilize West Lethbridge Employment area structure plan. You might as well just shelf it and let development proceed with little or no control. So what are the facts? From the administration point of view, there was a 20-page report for the rationale of the University Drive Gateway Corridor, which was quite detailed with photos showing examples of what was envisaged. Secondly, City Council bylaw report that details the background and prior decisions, including the one that was defeated less than a year ago, basically being the same amendment being proposed. Then there was, thirdly, the public hearing report with the recommendation that the bylaw be defeated, and finally, the PowerPoint presentation made at the public hearing. So some of the salient facts included in the rather voluminous material provided by the administration was, firstly, that this particular area structure plan was adopted quite a while back, and that the area comprises an area mainly in an agricultural setting meant to transition to an urban setting, and the interim uses were based on similar land uses that were developed prior to when the ASP was adopted. And it was meant to be a bridge between existing development and the future development planned for the area. Secondly, the current 20% usage with a 200-meter setback was to align with the outcomes of University Drive Gateway Corridor identified in the area structure plan under consideration. And the first report I referred to goes into great detail regarding this. So basically, passing this bylaw would now put you in non-alignment with that particular corridor plan. Thirdly, no city water currently is available, which means increased risk for firefighting purposes, which leaves the city exposed to liability issues. Don't forget that nothing prevents the applicant from proceeding with his plans in other areas that can better accommodate his proposed developments. So what he is proposing, we have all sorts of land areas that can accommodate that particular project that he would like. Fourthly, there's cost associated. So there's the off-site levies that will have to be collected, and those are in great detail identified in the reports, which I don't need to repeat. Also, allowing development prematurely, which will mean that the acquisition for moving forward in compliance with that particular area structure plan would become quite cost prohibitive. So this proposed bylaw is not compliant with the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the Municipal Development Plan, the University Drive Corridor Plan, the administrative reports, and the information provided at the public hearing details in non-compliance. Further, it's not in compliance with this council's 2022 Lethbridge City Council Action Plan. So what was the evidence of the applicant? Okay, so all of the evidence was anecdotal. He said he can deal with firefighting issues. He says he doesn't need sewer. He says he doesn't need water. But on questioning, he did acknowledge that he knew the limitations regarding the development of the land when he acquired it. So this was not a surprise, and it wouldn't have been a surprise for anyone since the plan was passed in 1992. Secondly, there was no site plan. I asked him specifically about that, and he had no idea what percentage of the land area presently owned would be occupied by his project. You would think that when you were making requesting accommodation from council, you would be able to at least indicate what area of the land would be occupied. Thirdly, he did acknowledge he could build a road to access the 20% that he could develop for the purpose that he wants to use it for now. Fourthly, yes, there was emphasis on it being a temporary structure, and I think the administration alluded to it, and I'll allude to it too. A temporary doesn't necessarily become temporary. I'm not going to go into non-conforming uses and grandfathering clauses and things like that, but the reality is that I don't even have to go into that part of my debate. It's the general tendency of council to try and assist folks that seek something from them, but I remind you that approving this proposed amendment affects the entire city. Most of us weren't there when the SSRP was adopted, nor when the MDP was adopted, or when the Gateway Corridor Plan was adopted, or even when this particular plan that is being sought to be amended was adopted. But I know that all of these plans were put in place to provide an orderly and staged development of our city in an efficient, cost-effective, and attractive manner that would benefit the city as a whole. Doing a spot amendment to change the rules for one landowner who knew what the rules were when he acquired the land, I believe sends the wrong message. And the message is feel free to ignore all the plans and let's do development on a ad hoc basis. One presenter said that previous council had an anti-business bias. I disagree. Council has a duty to proceed with the orderly development of the city and not make bylaw amendments that benefit a single landowner who knew what the rules were when he acquired the land. We were presented evidence-based information from administration and anecdotal information from the applicant. That's not enough to tip my vote in their favor. Accordingly, I reiterate, I am voting against this amendment.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman. Not Mayor Spearman, sorry. Sorry, at least I didn't say your name. Mayor Higgin, I apologize. I appreciate the comments of my colleague to the left there in his logic, and I think that the logic makes lots of sense if it's a permanent building. And I emphasize the word being permanent. I believe that a part of our strategic plan is we wanted to make sure we were open for business, to cut red tape and to work with our business community in finding solutions. And so I think our administration did an amazing job in presenting and showing the facts, and it's now up to us to make the decisions. And so this is where the difference between the bureaucracy and politics comes in hand. And so we need to make that value judgment. I can't imagine there'd be much opposition from the surrounding neighborhood if we were to approve this. We didn't hear much opposition. If anything, we heard a few people speaking in favor of it, and these probably were some hand-picked individuals to come forward. I think we're all pretty smart in that, but I look at the big picture. Obviously, Mr. Duncan sees there's a demand for something, a need in the community, and by allowing this, we're helping that need get filled. Mr. Duncan told us that if a big box retailer wanted to come here, he could live. It's in his best interest because it's his land. To sell it to something like that would actually fit within the parameters of the area structure plan. But he also deserves a right to get a return on his investment. True, he knew the rules going in, but there was an expectation that things would be developed at a faster rate. So I can't see the downside to doing this. In regards to some of the other issues, for example, just if you look a little bit north, there is a permanent storage facility there. And so we'll be doing something that's more temporary, a little more southerly. The negative consequences, fire suppression, all that, I think those issues will be addressed through our development permits when it does come to that point. But I believe that the downside is not as great as the upside. And so for that reason, I will be supporting this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a pretty clear understanding of which way I was going to support this previously. However, I have to admit that Acting Mayor Dodick has certainly muddied the waters, so thank you for doing that. As a part of that, I referenced going to what the terms are that we're using with respect to this particular property. Are we looking at development or are we looking at usage? So development is defined as a process that creates growth and progress, positive change, or the addition of physical, economic, environmental, social, and demographic components. I don't see that as in contrast with usage, which is temporary by its very nature. And I anticipate that when Mr. Duncan, or I reflect on when Mr. Duncan came forward, he indicated that this was a series of temporary structures that would be placed on land adjacent to property that is owned by the city and owned by other property owners, and would be there for a prescribed period of time, meaning that if there was a bid to purchase that property for a different use, then he would consider it. So I have some concerns over development usage, whether we're looking at a long-term use of this property for the intent for which Mr. Duncan has implied versus what it could be used for in the future for something else. The second comment that I have is in regards to, he was quite clear in regards to a slough that was being, that is on the property and could very well, by administration's own admission, could be used for fire suppression. These are metal containers. Let's be clear. We're not dealing with wooden containers. We're not dealing with wooden structures. We're dealing with metal containers. Doesn't mean that they can't catch fire, but there appears to be adequate fire suppression resources available. And the last is, by virtue of the city's decision previously, and I do take into consideration what Acting Mayor Dodick has indicated in terms of a number of different reports, what the city has indicated is that there is a fairly substantial area of this plot of land that actually would be governed by right-of-way, which would preclude, at any time, in my view, a big box store from situating on that property. So in the interim, Mr. Duncan is looking for a return on investment. Is that a bad thing? If he follows the rules that the city has set down for him, is he in compliance? And so those are the things that I will consider when I cast my vote for or against, which I have not made up my mind yet.
Deputy Mayor Crowson.
Thank you, Mayor Higgin. It doesn't take a historian to realize that we have way too many examples in this community of short-term decisions made with the best of intentions for the best of reasons that cause us long-term problems that we then have to try to figure out how to plan around, that cost a lot of money, that create huge havoc. That's the reason we create long-term plans. We need to plan things in an organized, comprehensive, and smart manner. It is never an easy decision between the long-term needs of the community and the short-term needs of a landowner. But in this manner, I have to go on behalf of the long-term needs of the community because 100 years from now, the right decision will bear out in the long run. So I will be voting against this bylaw.
Mr. City Solicitor, do you have?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm hearing in a number of the comments reliance on a couple of statements that were made during the public hearing that really aren't before council. And that is, one is the representation that an owner would sell in the future in some circumstances. And so I just want to ensure that council's aware that they can't rely on that representation in public hearing. It's not before you in terms of the amendment to the area structure plan, nor the particulars of the development that the owner may come to do when he submits a development permit. We're just talking about an amendment to an area structure plan. So I've just heard reference to those 2 points, which I would characterize. One as really more about the permitting that would happen if this amendment is passed. But a different owner, I mean, once the amendment is passed, any application could be made that fits within that. So I just wanted to make sure that council was aware that those 2 points, just because there seemed to be a lot of weight being placed on those 2 points, I wanted to just make sure council was aware of that.
Thank you. Councillor Middleton, hope you've already debated, unfortunately, so I can't have you. So, point of clarification, then go ahead.
Leave it.
Are you okay? Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Yeah, I have a point of clarification for Mr. Lowen. So just so I'm understanding what you've just said properly, we can make this amendment. Everything still has to go through permitting, which then those permits could be declined based on what the usage was. So if he came forward and isn't building those temporary buildings. I need to clarify this.
Question, I don't know. I mean, I'll pass over to Solicitor Lowen. We're getting again into questions of administration. I don't know if that's. Can you help me if this is an okay question to ask? Because I don't feel comfortable with it.
I can answer it in a way that's safe. One is, I have no idea what the particulars of an application would be or whether it would be permitted or not permitted. The point I'm making is, if you're relying upon what the applicant's statement of what they intended to permit, you really can't put weight on those because those can change for all kinds of reasons. You know, and so I heard today that, you know, it might be a factor in terms of supporting this if because of a certain stated willingness to sell, for example. I'm just advising that council would rely upon those kinds of representations in a public hearing at your own peril.
Okay, thank you. That does clarify it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to add my support for this amendment, and I know that looking through it and having the opportunity to hear my colleagues that, you know, are voting in favor of this, a temporary structure, it's able to be moved quickly. I mean, and open for. I really want us to be open for business and not impede business growth in our community. And so I won't reiterate what my colleagues, former colleagues that are voting in favor of this amendment have mentioned, but with that, I will be voting in favor of this, and I'll pass the time back over to Councillor Palladino to close.
Well, I don't have too much more to add, just that the property in question is already zoned direct control. And the applicant would like to zone it to another direct control. So it's really not so much amending the area structure plan, but the zoning of his particular parcel. The notion of asking him to find another location is ludicrous because he doesn't own land in another location, or if he does, he doesn't own it near this piece of property. It's this piece of property that he wants to amend. Still haven't got an answer to my question. I don't know when I get the answer to the question about how the city got their property.
You can't answer questions.
But let me know when I can ask that. Other than that, I'll leave it at that.
All right. Is everyone ready for the vote? The debate is in, and I'll do it by roll call. Madam City Clerk.
Councillor Middleton Hope.
I'm in favor of it.
Councillor Palladino. Councillor Parker.
In favor.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
In favor.
Acting Mayor Dodick.
Excuse me, opposed.
Deputy Mayor Croson.
Opposed.
Mayor Hagan.
In favor.
Councillor Campbell.
In favor.
Councillor, oh, I guess Councillor Carlson is excused himself. So that carries 6-2.
Carries 6-2. And for a third reading, be it resolved that bylaw 6347, amendment to bylaw 5798, the West Lethbridge Employment Center Area Structure Plan be given third reading, and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal the same. Councillor Palladino. Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? That would. You know what? Let's do another roll call here.
Councillor Palladino.
In favor?
Parker. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
In favor.
Acting Mayor Dodick.
The second reading had the actual vote. Third reading, I just say okay.
Deputy Mayor Croson.
I'm going to stay opposed.
Mayor Hagan.
In favor.
Councillor Campbell.
In favor.
And Councillor Middleton Hope.
Favor.
That carries 7-1.
Right. With that, we move to City Council updates. Is any updates? See no updates. Move to the closed session. Motions here. Water infrastructure matter 14.1. Further be resolved that council direct the closed meeting discussions, reports, documents, and attachments with respect to water infrastructure matter remain confidential pursuant to section 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be resolved that this matter be referred to the Intermunicipal Committee, City of Lethbridge and Lethbridge County meeting on April 21st, 2022. Councillor Palladino. Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? So carries. Next, I have a motion from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, closed meeting ratification of representatives to boards, commissions, and committees. 14.2, further be resolved that council direct that the closed meeting discussions, reports, documents, and attachments with respect to ratification of representatives to boards, commissions, and committees remain confidential pursuant to section 17, harmful to personal privacy, 23, local public body confidences, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be resolved that council ratify the following community members to the Economic Development Lethbridge EDL Board of Director for a 2-year term effective immediately. For 1, Jan Gong, Multicultural Sector Representative, and number 2, Shannon Frank, Environment Sector Representative. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
I'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Any opposed? So carries. And I have a resolution from Councillor Parker. Closed meeting omnibus 14.3, 14.4, and 14.5. Be it resolved that council direct that the closed meeting discussions and documents with respect to intergovernmental relationships number 1 and human resources matter and intergovernmental relationships number 2 remain confidential pursuant to section 16, harmful to personal privacy, 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much, Mayor Spearman. I'm proud to be carrying this resolution. Just go. I call the question.
Question has been called. All in favor?
Make sure you guys are listening.
What
all right. Any opposed?
Mayor Sharing's opposed.
You are in favor, correct?
Who?
Of the omnibus resolutions.
Yes.
Stupid. Boy, is the day going too long here? Gee. All right, Councillor Morrow. So, so with that, that does pass, and I believe that's it. And with that, we are now adjourned. Thank you.